Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Life is Beautiful is over. The game starts now.
Meet a real-life Prince Charming. He has met the woman of his dreams, and he'll do everything in his power to sweep her off her feet and carry her away. Now, his fairy tale life takes a serious turn. To protect his family, this loving father has to turn the hard truth into a simple game. Wonderful. 2 thumbs up, says Siskel and Ebert. A modern comic masterpiece, raves the Chicago Tribune. Written, directed by, and starring Italy's national treasure, Roberto Benigni. In the story that proves love, family, and imagination conquer all. Life is beautiful.
Andy, we've got a lot going on in the social universe, and you're still insane. So where would people go to see those worlds collide?
They can check out my insanity over at The Next Reel's Instagram page, Instagram.com/The Next Reel, where you can see posts related to the movie we're talking about each week. We have a variety of other posts. We have host pick of the week from different hosts of all of our various shows. We have posts about cinematographers, we have movie posters, actors. We have all sorts of posts. It's a great place to check out some of the images we're doing and some of the little clips. We're doing some flashback posts as well with clips from old shows. It's a great place to kind of see what we're up to.
It sure is. So, even if you just like to trickle a little bit of just microdose your feed with movie stuff, ours is a channel to do that. We're the ones to add. So
we are your microdose friends.
You'll be, that's a movie microdose with The Next Reel. I'm putting that on a shirt today. Andy Nelson, this is a controversial watch, this movie. Turns out there are a lot of people who don't feel good about this feel-good movie. I'm talking, of course, about Life is Beautiful. Roberto Benigni.
La vita è bella. Yeah, this is, I think it's controversial now more so than it was at the time. At the time it was released, it was just this, definitely surprising story that was a kind of a comedy that took place during the Holocaust at a concentration camp. So certainly there is that element of it that made a lot of people scratch their heads, but not all the people, because all the people's kind of loved it. It won lots of awards. It won a lot of Oscars. This was largely a beloved film. And I think that's wherein the problem doth lie these days.
It is. And you just went Shakespearean on us a little bit, Andy Nelson. Yeah. Doth. You don't drop doth without a real point to be heard. So this was the first time I've watched this movie in a number of years. And, I have to admit, I think that I may have sobered up a little bit since the first time I watched this movie. I noticed my experience of the movie. I felt a little bit more forehead slappy than I did in the past. And I think I've been able to wrap my head around why I've struggled with it and its struggle with tone to my eye. I'm curious if it has held true for you this whole time.
That's an interesting question because I, like you, probably haven't seen it since the late 90s. It has been quite a while since I watched it. I do remember being quite enamored of it at the time it came out. And I mean, it's easy with Benigni being such kind of a clown in all of the award circles and all the press junkets. He really just made it fun to really love this movie and love him. Watching it now, I really see how people can find problems with it. I also see why people love it. And I mean, Benigni, he approached plenty of Holocaust survivors. He approached plenty of organizations that really speak to kind of the history of all this and showed it to them and everything. And generally people were pretty positive about it because of the kind of the fable approach that he took with it. And I feel like I see all of that there, although I can certainly see why people would be upset with it. Do I love it as much as I did when I saw it in the late 90s? No, I don't. I think that, but I also don't hate it like some people who say it's the worst film ever made. I don't think it's that. It's a line that is very tricky to cross when you're making a film during the Holocaust that has such comedic elements to it. It's interesting that we're having this conversation after having seen such similar success from Jojo Rabbit that Taika Waititi did. Another example of a comedy set during the Holocaust that is making light of all this. I think that there's danger there in doing that, but I always go back to Mel Brooks and the stories that he had with like the producers and stuff, where it's a great way by making fun of these things. You take some of the steam out of kind of the evil of them. And I think that it depends on how you read it. So I don't love it as much as I did. I think that there are a lot more problems with it than I had at the time, but I don't think it's the worst film ever made.
I don't think it's the worst film ever made, but I can now more rationally understand why people do. I struggle with it, and I want to. You brought up what'd you bring up? The producers, right? Mel Brooks.
Yes.
I think
and
that is
Jojo
both,
Rabbit.
and Jojo Rabbit, and I think both of those are apt comparisons. I actually think Jojo Rabbit is probably tonally a better conversation to have around this movie. I think Jojo Rabbit does it better. I also like Taika Waititi better than Roberto Benigni in his just in terms of my cinema, like my tastes in cinema. And I feel like both of these movies truck in that, like, there are going to be things that you're going to laugh at because they're absurd and awkward and lovable, and there are going to be things that are scary and horrible, and we have to face those things. And I think walking that line, one could make the argument that Taika Waititi has learned a lot from the kinds of comic attempts at making the Holocaust funny, and he's done so in a way with greater sensibility to the things that people find infuriating with Life is Beautiful. I don't think Benigni has as strong a hand in what makes his movie a comedy versus what things are hard to watch, and it presents with less confidence in that regard, that he's so proud of himself for making a movie that I felt more Benigni ego in this movie that was completely transparent to me than I ever have before in watching this movie. It was just such a statement about him, and I was never able to really disappear into the thread of the film. So I found that frustrating. And that was new. And I think that's a result of, frankly, me being a little bit poisoned by the Miramax Benigni press tour and everything that I have now learned and watched and read. And, starting with his Oscar performance and moving on from there, it just reads as a Benigni showcase of Benigni tropes.
Well, and that's, there's a lot to that. I think the fact that this film spends nearly an hour just setting up the love story, really. I mean, we have 50 minutes of Guido falling for Dora and all the comedy that ensues. And yes, there's hats, eggs, keys. There's a little bit
upholstery issues.
There's a little bit of talk about what is to come, but it never quite gets there. And then 50 minutes in, we have kind of a time jump, and now they have a son, young Josue, and things are a little darker, and eventually at some point they get taken off to a camp. And that's about an hour in. So it's about a full hour of setup to get to this point where we go to the camp. And we have to also remember, it's not established at the beginning of the film, but we definitely realize it come the end, because at the beginning we have a narration setting up the story, that this is a simple story but not an easy one to tell, and it sets up this idea about this being a fable. And at the end of the film we find out that is the grown-up son who is recounting this story of his parents, essentially.
Right.
And I think because of that, I don't know, it ends up coming across as kind of odd to me, more so now, because it really is like it's more just kind of a story of his kind of his life, I guess, his parents and the trauma that they went through. It's not really just kind of a specific Holocaust film. And so I feel like that's the struggle that I do find with this film, because it almost feels like Benigni was not quite confident enough to do the whole story focused on the concentration camp element of it, and needed an hour of setup, which it ends up feeling a little kind of clunky, especially because he is such a hammy actor. And more than ever before, I felt watching him, I'm like, I feel like he's kind of trying not to laugh at his own jokes, like
right.
he's like cracking a little bit. And that got a little frustrating. It just, you got speaking last week of Massimo Troisi and how he was kind of a Steve Martin actor who kind of moved into telling a more serious story. This really is kind of the Chevy Chase, or perhaps more the Martin Short sort of Saturday Night Live actor who's now shifting tones to do something a little more serious, and but while still maintaining the overly comedic character. And it becomes frustrating.
But the problem is, I still get a sense that Benigni wanted to make Schindler's List and just didn't know how.
Yeah, I mean, it's a struggle. It's really a struggle with this film now, and I don't know. I guess I'm curious what your take on this whole idea of fables in film is, because I think it is something that is pointed out right at the beginning, that this is a fable, and there is sorrow, and like a fable is full of wonder and happiness. But I feel like sometimes in cinematic storytelling, especially because it's real world stories, it's not like talking animals or anything like that, it's hard to read those lines. This is something that Paul Haggis had issues with Crash, because, I mean, he has said, it was a fable. It was never meant to be real world. Obviously the stereotypes in that film are so over the top. It's just pointing out the moral issues of everything. It's not designed to be real world. And even more so, Joe versus the Volcano, a film that we love and have talked about on this show. This is something else that's meant to be a fable. And, I just wonder, is there a struggle by the nature of doing that? Or is Benigni just doing a really poor job at it?
Well, I think the latter. I think it's obtuse as a fable. And the problem is that no one who watches this movie after the opening where he says this is a fable is going to remember that they said this was a fable when you start introducing the camps, the trains, and the gas chambers, right? That's not a fable. And I think part of the problem, if I'm going to take a page out of Rob's book and try to fix the movie, I think the problem is the perspective shift should have been around the family and the kid much earlier. I think that's going to be the thing, because you get the sense that what he's trying to do is tell the story of this fable of how the child remembered his experience of being raised and protected from the Holocaust, right? And the specific things that were happening to his family. But we spend so long in the attempted like meet cute that this protracted, sort of pathologically protracted romance, that we don't get the sort of what I wanted out of this movie, which is the insidious growth of the Nazi regime in the background, right? That we get enough of what's going on as this like C story, so that when we actually get to the camp, it feels earned. It does not feel earned here. It does not feel like a fable. It feels like just like a separate experience.
I cede your point. I think there's quite a bit of truth to that. I don't think it's a complete failure, though. I mean, I think Benigni, I think that there are times where he's actually getting it. And I think there are times that work pretty well. Case in point, I really think that what he has, the character of the doctor, Dr. Lessing, that relationship I find so fascinating throughout the world. This is Horst Buchholz that we talked about way back in the Magnificent Seven. He's playing the doctor, and it's a really interesting character. Guido befriends him when he's working as a waiter at the hotel, and they have this riddle game that they have going back and forth. I think that there's something great about the way that the character is set up there. And then once he's in the camp, the doctor sees him, and there's this sense that the doctor is going to kind of find a way to help him and figure something out. And it's like, there are a few moments of setup that allow for some interesting stuff to happen there, only to finally be let down and just heartbroken when Guido realizes that the doctor's only interest in keeping him alive and kind of helping him and making sure that he can be around is to kind of continue this riddle game. That was a really well-constructed thread in this that I thought worked really well. And if we had more things like that could have really made it work, as opposed to Guido just kind of some of the silly antics that he often has, I feel like that could have really led to a stronger story.
I do too. And I particularly because it would allow us to showcase some incredibly strong dramatic performances, right? I think what we have in Horst Buchholz, where we get to see him as kind of the lovable businessman doctor sitting in the restaurant, and their relationship as it grows, is we get this complete transformation where he has lost his mind over riddles. That he doesn't have a special relationship with Guido at all. He has the same relationship with many people about their riddles, and he is at the expense. Their relationship falls at the expense of these riddles. That there is, we get this wonderful sort of background arc in that entire sequence where Guido thinks this is the doctor trying to help him. I love that setup. I love that he is so bent on potentially escape, and the crushing blow that happens when he realizes the doctor is just a riddle monger, I think was really special. And I think that is an element of this movie that is to be celebrated, right? If that isn't just a lovely narrative arc, a narrative bit in this movie, I don't know what is. I totally agree with you. I think I think there are things about this movie that don't work. That is one of them that really does.
Yeah. And another interesting element that I think works really well, and unfortunately is never set up or there's nothing done with it, and it frustrated me to no end. We have, obviously Dora comes from kind of a different cloth than Guido, who seems to be more the country bumpkin who's come to town. And we don't know this, but after they have gotten married, they have had no contact with her family, because he basically steals her from her fiance, and they run off together. There's no contact with her family, and Josue's around. And it's not until Dora's mother comes in when Guido had left to go take care of something, that Grandma comes in and talks to Josue, has a really magical conversation that was just so special. The way that it's a fantastic actress too. We have Marisa Paredes, the Spanish actress playing Dora's mom, who has this beautiful conversation with Josue that is just like, oh, this is setting up for something really special with these two. And then it's gone. Like, that's it. Like, because Guido and Josue are off to the camps and Dora goes too. Yeah. And that whole storyline with mom is just like thrown out the door. And I'm like, what was that for? It was like, there was a beautiful setup for something there, and we never get anything out of it.
Yeah, totally. Unrequited relationships. And you bring up the fact that we have a wonderful actress there. We really do. And I think some of the real gems in this movie are gems that let these other performers really do their craft, right?
Yeah.
I find Benigni in so many of these sequences is the distraction. There's a crushing conversation about, and I'm quoting here, what to do with the cripples in this movie. And, they're sitting at dinner together, and it's all of the sort of sophisticates talking about, the teaching, and they're using this conversation about math and how to teach mathematics. Is it too complicated of an exercise of mathematics to discuss what to do with people who are, in the eyes of this cast, a drain on society? And if we would just, quote, kill them all, we would save 1.2 million billion whatever in the context of their conversation. And you can see Dora and Guido are frustrated by this, and you see that there's a relief when the fiance says, oh yeah, no, we could never have that conversation, where you think that the pivot is that he's actually a human and he is actually on the side of life, and it turns out he's not. He's just on the side of new math.
Right.
I mean, it's just a horrible demonstration of people who are really selling it, who are playing, true demons in other cloth. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I feel like there are a lot of those moments in this film that make this film like it's better than it should be because of Benigni's just the way that he constructed things. But it's interesting because I feel like a lot of the problem that people just flat out say that they have is the nature of kind of comedy and the Holocaust. And I get that there's a line there. I mean, geez, I just recently watched a clip from an interview. It was like an awards thing where they have a bunch of filmmakers there and they're all being interviewed together. And the interviewer was talking to Michael Haneke about films. And Haneke talked about how problematic it is for him to have anyone make a story about the Holocaust. Like, he was offended by Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List because he's like, you should not be making, entertainment out of this story. And so it's
this is akin to war profiteering.
Yeah, right. So you've got that level of person who just walls off anything that is in any way telling a story about this. And I mean, I'm definitely not on the Haneke's side of thing. I think you should be able to use an art form to find the emotion and connect with people and find understanding and compassion and stuff. I think there's amazing stuff that filmmakers can do with that. I also don't have a problem with the humor as long as it makes sense, which is why I didn't really have a problem with Jojo Rabbit. And in the nature of this film, I don't necessarily have an issue with Benigni's father going this largely circuitous route that kind of is nonsensical in order to just kind of protect his son's innocence at the cost of everyone else in the camp. I don't by nature have a problem with that. I think the issue I find now as I watch it is just I don't feel Benigni has a really strong approach with it, and I think going back to our conversation at the beginning, I think Waititi has a stronger approach at it. And I think that therein lies the difference with these two.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on this. I feel like all of the complaints of the movie that are complaints about, comedy and the Holocaust, those aren't my problems. My problem is I don't think this is a great film. I think this is a good film with some strong moments, but it's not a great film. Yeah. And to that point, it's a film that doesn't really know itself, and when it needs to be sincere and when it needs to be to maintain its comic roots. Is it slapstick versus sort of black comedy? Like, is this is this more like a Death of Stalin sort of a film, which I think is another one that has a strong roots and certainly strong comedic roots, and it tells a story using comedy that is hard, and I think it does it incredibly well. I just struggle because I think at its root, Andy, this movie is wildly overrated.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's overrated, versus just having a conversation about what works in it and what doesn't. Yes, I mean clearly it's overrated. Clearly, the Miramax marketing machine, paired with the insane craziness of Roberto Benigni when he was on the press tours, just really spun this thing into just kind of this frenzy of insanity that really kind of pushed it through the award season with everybody just shouting its praises and largely not seeing any issues with it. And I think that therein lies the issue. And, had Miramax not been behind it, had Roberto Benigni not been such a kind of an over-the-top showboater when he was, accepting all of his awards and whatnot, I don't know if we would be having this conversation about this particular film. I mean, just the year before, Miramax put a lot of money into Sling Blade. And because, that movie had come out, they picked it up. Billy Bob Thornton, though, nobody really knew who he was. So they put a huge campaign into that. Following up with this year, they just kind of continued that. They had two films getting quite a lot of awards, nominations, Life is Beautiful and Shakespeare in Love. And Miramax just pumped the money into this film. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of that whole battle when we get to the awards bit at the end. But in one of the books written about this, Weinstein, it was reported that he spent, I think, at least $5 million campaigning for Shakespeare in Love. And I would imagine quite a bit of money pushing into this too. I think for this film, he had Roberto Benigni move to LA for a month during the period where all of the voting was like the peak voting period. And every night there were parties, and Benigni was at every one of them. And he is such a friendly, over the top guy. It's like, of course, people are going to tick his name off when they vote for him for Best Actor and for Life is Beautiful. And I think that's what Harvey was really trying to do, is get money, push the money out the door so that he could get this film and Shakespeare in Love a lot of Oscars, more so than the films that likely deserved it. I think that this was really the peak of that, because I don't think after this they had quite a time where they ended up really walking away with all the awards, or feeling like they had won everything. I mean, certainly they had. It was a few years later, I think in 2003, they were involved in 4 of the 5 pictures that were nominated for Best Picture. And, so I mean, there's obviously other times like that, but this was the year that it felt like the awards that Miramax won were basically bought.
I just hate the fact you watched. I assume the version that you have is in Italian and subtitled.
Yeah.
The HBO version, the version that's on Hulu, HBO Max right now, is dubbed.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's the version I watched, and I spent the entire time insulted by it. Like,
that's
I
funny.
was just so mad.
I saw your note, stupid dubbing, and I assumed that you were talking about like the whole issue that we've had many times with Italian films, that they they do all their audio after the
separately.
Fact. Yeah, right. And I was like, I don't think they did that with this film. I know we ran into that with The Postman Il Postino last time, because there was a French actor in amongst all the Italians, and all of his lines were dubbed. But so that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, but just my experience. I just wanted to clear that up. It's terrible. Don't watch that version. You can find the other version, but it was interesting that they really flooded the market with this dubbed version, I think, at that time. And that is what is still floating around. I think this was part of the Miramax experience, was for all those people, all those future Amazon reviewers, we want them to be able to watch this movie without reading it, and so we're going to go heavy in on the dubbed version. And it did not perform as well in the marketplace as certainly not in English-speaking countries writ large. But that was the version that really hit the market here.
That whole thing, you just reminded me that they actually theatrically released it as the dubbed. Right. I think you could go to the theater and see it either way after the award nominations had been announced.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about that.
Right, and so that was my experience, and I think that was that is a quintessentially like Miramax strategy for that sort of anodyne experience of watching a movie, watching a foreign film without having to read it, being able to hear and then just being frustrated because their lips didn't line up with the words.
Yeah.
So it's a real onion of frustration.
Well, that's
layer after layer.
And that is such a frustration with Miramax anyway, because that's largely what they operated on. That's how they began in the 80s, is they would take these foreign films and they would do what they needed to adjust it for the way that they saw for an American audience. And that meant sometimes re-editing the movie. And a lot of people had issues with that, but it still was something
filmmakers.
Like filmmakers, right, exactly. And it was just, it's a frustrating thing that it still obviously is happening. And I believe actually Hayao Miyazaki, I think they had approached Miyazaki about that, and Miyazaki pretty much flatly said, "You will never touch anything that I have done."
Yeah.
So.
There are some sequences, again, speaking of language, by way of a really terrible segue, there are some issues that I have with with one scene in particular that I think is supposed to be, it's supposed to be satirical, that sort of black comedy bit. And I'm supposed to be laughing, I think. But because the film struggles with tone, I don't take it that way. And I'm talking about the sequence in which Guido volunteers to translate the German soldiers' instructions to new members to the camp, to the concentration camp. And in doing so, as the guard is giving his orders, what we are meant to think is that he's giving orders for, the bathrooms are over here, you're going to wear these clothes, you're going to report to work. It's all not good stuff, right? It's just like this is the horror of your life right now. But we don't know that because what we have is Guido, who is translating for his son, even though he does not speak German, right? So the German soldier speaks, Guido translates something completely irrelevant to what the soldier is saying. And what he's saying is there are rules to the camp. It's all a game. You have to earn points, and anybody who wins a points wins a tank, and it's really great. And the kid is adorable, is a triumph of a young performer in this movie. And his face is just lit up because he now believes he's part of this game. So I am torn in this sequence because I actually find, like, I'm really drawn to the warmth of what this father is trying to do for his son. And also, I am so out of the realm of believability because of, I think, struggles with tone that I can't take it as a heartwarming joke. All I'm thinking about is there is no way that German soldier doesn't understand a little Italian, at least enough to understand that he's being had.
It stretches the lines of believability there. That's one of those areas I kind of let go because it ends up playing pretty cute. My biggest issue with it, which it comes after the fact, is like, is anybody concerned that no one actually knows what the real rules are? And
right.
that they actually might just get killed for turning left instead of right?
How do they all end up at work the next day?
Yeah.
Right? I presume that's what was being instructed.
Right. So there's that whole issue. And that falls into, I think you could say it all falls under the whole idea of this fable, but it also just ends up feeling like a weaker script point because it just doesn't feel like there's any way for the young son to have seen all of that in a way that it played out that way. And that's my struggle with the idea of this being kind of this fable, is especially being told from the son's point of view, is I keep wanting to go, okay, well, how is he seeing this? Because this is clearly meant to be his impression of how things played out. And I don't feel like when I see scenes like this, I'm like, I just don't feel like I feel like for a scene like this to really work right, you need to be able to see it from both points of view, right? You need to be able to see it from the realities of what dad was really doing, but also from the son's viewpoint of how it's all being interpreted in that child mind. And I just don't think those two mesh. I think it's all just designed to be this story for this kid, and it's just this crazy thing. And it ends up becoming more problematic, even if it's really cute. Nobody here really knows what's going on. It's set up in a way where it's you have all of these people in this these new prisoners here who have no idea what the rules are, unless, and we don't ever find this out, which if this would have made it a stronger scene, if somebody in the room actually did speak German, and then after Guido had gone through this whole thing for his son, this other person could say, okay, so this is really what we have to do, so that at least we know, okay, there clearly is somebody who's still kind of in on the game with Guido for Josue, but is able to still kind of help out. And we start establishing at least a character, another of these prisoners. But that is another thing that really never goes anywhere. I was kind of hoping that the other prisoner that we start kind of meeting and talking with would become somebody that could kind of help shepherd all of that.
A surrogate, an advocate for us.
Yes.
Right? This is Bartolomeo.
Right. Yes.
Played by Pietro de Silva, who was great, if not sullen. He really nailed sullen.
He definitely felt like a prisoner.
He sure did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think part of so much of that is that the game and the kind of perspective shift that Benigni is demanding of us has not been set up before we get to the camp, right? The game is centrally important to the thread of this movie holding together, and because we only get it so late that the real adventure feels like it doesn't start until an hour into the movie, if not later.
Yeah.
And I think that's frustrating. I was listening to to Tig Notaro's podcast this weekend, and there's an episode she does with Ira Glass, and she Ira asks her a question about her other acting roles, and she says, often when people come up to me, when directors come up to me and they are about to give me notes, they'll come to me on Star Trek, or they'll come to me, I'm a cop, or they'll come to me, right? She does a lot of stuff. She says, I always stop them and I say, wait. Let me just remind you, Tig Notaro has no range. So I'm laughing at this because I think she's delightful and she's very, very funny. And also, Roberto Benigni has no range. It's just from Roberto to Benigni. That's what you get. And there are some sweet moments that really lock into his exact identity, where what he is able to deliver meets what the scene needs delivered of it. And I think it's delightful, but most of the time I struggle with it. And the sequence where I struggle the most, where I feel like so much of the story has to pay off, is the death in the alley scene. And I want so much more of it than I feel like I've gotten. Do you have thoughts or comments on our ultimate resolution?
That's an area I feel like I would end up disagreeing with you. I feel like that's a point where it actually, his over the topness ends up working for me, because I feel like he's in a place right now. I mean, and I just don't understand. Like, I was on rewatching, I'm like, okay, so would he and Guido, or would Guido and Jose, would they have both just lived? And if they didn't bother running out at this particular point, like, I felt like the Germans are trying to get out of here because the Americans are coming. So did he end up putting them both at risk by this whole thing? Like, I really, like, the ending really troubled me, this viewing. And so I don't know, I guess as I watched this, I felt like, regardless of all that, I felt like once he was kind of like trying to get into the other camp and he's kind of dressed up like, or half dressed up like a woman, and gets caught, I don't know, I just really bought into that last moment that he had as he's kind of goofing for Josue, who's watching from that little secret box of theirs. And that just, I felt like that carried some heft for me, like taking him around the corner, and just hearing the guns go off. I felt like the music hit was a little strong there. It really kind of punched a little too hard. But I don't know. I felt like it was a balance that worked for me.
I feel like we go to movies to be played with a little bit, right? I mean, we go to movies to be pushed in certain emotional directions. This one for me felt particularly unscrupulously manipulative. I think there are some elegant things about the way it's presented, and I feel like the Tonino Della Colle camera here, especially, we talk about needing to see from the kid's perspective. This is where they get it right? When we look from his perspective in the box and watch his dad doing the clown step, with the soldier behind him, I think that shot is a quintessentially perfect shot for this movie. Yeah. And I found myself, like, all of the weight of that shot was in my heart as it's deflating as we walk around the corner, which I thought was just it ended up looking like a sitcom set. Like, it didn't feel real or natural to me. It felt like, okay, this is the guy that you've been following all along, and you know what's coming. There's going to be no surprise. We're marching him to his death, and it's a march. There's a march to death. It's a march. We're cutting in again. We're still marching to the boom, 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 and now he's dead.
Yeah.
I just felt I felt like it was too much.
I can't fault you for that. I certainly feel like it's one of those things that, it's pretty big. It's pretty broad. It's pretty telegraphed. Like, there are a lot of things pointing to the fact that this is what's going to be happening. So get ready for it. I guess I just, and that particular moment, even on this rewatch, I felt the connection between those two. And I think that it ended up working okay.
Let's talk about getting it made, Andy.
Yeah, Benigni, he wrote the script with Vincenzo Cerami, and he was inspired by the story of Rubino Romeo Salmoni, who wrote the book In the End, I Beat Hitler. And that book had some moments of comedy in it. And that's what really kind of drew Benigni to it. Salmoni was an Italian Jew who was in Auschwitz and survived and then reunited with his parents, but found his brothers had been murdered. And likewise, Benigni, his father was a member of the Italian army, and he had spent several years in a Nazi labor camp. And recounting stories of all of this to Roberto and his siblings, he used kind of comedy to tell the story. And those are the things that Benigni kind of pulled on and found a way to kind of tell this story in a way that had humor to it. And that was, I think, largely the direction that he chose to go. And like I said, he approached a lot of Jewish groups and Holocaust groups to talk about it beforehand. And I think that I don't find any of that sort of stuff offensive. And I guess that's, I think that he did a good job of telling a story that felt okay, like not offensive to me as far as the Holocaust goes. I feel like that the problem is just in Benigni and his inability to make a good film.
I feel like he read the book and he said, "Oh, this is a Holocaust story with some comedy in it." I really truck with comedy.
I'm a comedian.
I'm gonna suck all of the other stuff out because I don't need it. I don't need it. I think it's very interesting. I've not read the book, but it sounds like, reading the synopsis of it, it sounds like a harrowing story, and it sounds like a guy who does artfully craft his experience of comedy as a way to survive the Holocaust, right? And I think that is a noble effort, and it just doesn't feel like this is the honorific that really nails that experience,
unfortunately.
Anybody else you want to talk about in the cast that you're I
just want to say Nicoletta Braschi plays Dora. She is Benigni's real life wife, and I have to say she is just a bore to watch. She's beautiful, but I just what is up with her as an actress? Like, through the whole beginning, it's like he's just bumping into her and it's just like smiling like this dead smile. I really struggled with her everywhere in the film, and they were only saved because of Giorgio Contarini, who played Josue, who was adorable, like you already said. Nobody has a stomping fit better than Josue. It's the best one I've ever seen. So anyway, that's my opinions of the family.
Well, I struggle with the family too, but I don't want to fault Nicoletta Braschi because I feel like she was given exactly nothing to work with. And I think this is where the movie is at its greatest sort of fault in terms of an ego piece that's disingenuous. I'm not, but it just feels like very much anytime she's on screen, it's an opportunity for him to be mugging the camera. Yeah. And I found that exhausting. That's what makes the first hour such a slog, because she's given nothing. She's might as well be doing that to a poster.
Right.
And so I found that hard. So I'm with you. It's a snooze of a part. And I felt for her. I felt for her. Like, what is, maybe in the second half, maybe when they get to the camp, she'll be giving something. She was given a longing stare into the distance out the window in the middle of the night. That was her big swan song moment.
Yeah.
It was uninspired. Sad.
Really was, really frustrating. I mean, even with the reunion at the end between her and Josue, I'm like, meh.
And talk about the most anemic final freeze frame. Right. We did it. We won. Like, that was, I ended on a real whimper for me.
Well, I mean, it ties into the whole game, and I guess to that end, it makes sense because in Josue's mind, they've won. They've got the tank. He's with his mom, and everything. Everyone's happy. But it does feel very like, okay. That's, even the narration, the final narration at the end, it felt like they were just wanting to get out quick. Which I know you want to get out quick when you're telling a story, but it's just like maybe a little too quick.
Well, exactly. I do feel like sometimes ending on a freeze frame is a signal that maybe you don't know how to end the movie.
Yeah.
Right. I think there are
not just
there
a
are times
freeze
when
frame,
it works.
a freeze frame with some voiceover.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. I feel like there are times when it works, and I just want to really put a showcase around Hudson Hawk, where it really,
of course you do.
I think you'll note it really works. It's a real celebration of the tool.
I hear Scorsese references it quite a bit.
I think he does. Yeah. Anyway,
can I talk about the music, Pete?
Yeah, let's do it. This is music by Nicola Piovani.
I love this score. I mean, it's interesting. The last film and this film had such I feel, iconic scores that I feel rightfully won awards. It's such a beautiful score. It works really well for this particular film. And so, I don't know. I'm really taken by it. I think the music is beautiful here. I imagine you have some issues, though.
Why?
Well, because I feel like this falls into the same camp a little bit of like last week's, where perhaps it uses its themes a little too frequently.
It 100% does, Andy. I'm just messing with you. It's so obnoxious. Write a new theme. Come on. Yeah, no, but to your point, it is a lovely it is a lovely score. Just put it on repeat, and you can score lots of movies with it. Apparently, that's what they did here. So, I'm with you. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
and just want more of it.
I have one question, and then we can move into the awards a little more. The editor, Simona Paghi. Do you feel like that is like Simon Pegg's like Italian alter ego? Like, I want the two of them in a room together.
I had not seen this at all. It makes me really want to investigate. She's got 78 editor credits, and it makes me think, gosh, I wonder if there's a Simon Pegg credit in there somewhere.
Wouldn't that be great?
That's really funny.
With only if was it Nick Angel, the music supervisor, also was involved in that particular property.
That's awesome.
Oh,
you know what's actually really funny is she's also Simona Paghi is also the editor on the Jesus Rolls.
Oh, look at that!
The Turturro, yeah, that's currently cruising at a 4.3 on the IMDb scale. Just to follow up, on the Jesus
just in
Rolls.
case people wanted to know more about that one. Yeah.
All right.
Awards, Pete. Awards.
Oh, let's talk about award season, Andy.
This is why this is in our current series. It is it's a foreign film nominated for Best Picture. In this particular case, it's the 1998 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture along with Shakespeare in Love, Elizabeth, Saving Private Ryan, and The Thin Red Line. This again, the Miramax machine. Saving Private Ryan is the one everybody was saying was going to win, although Terrence Malick always has his fans. But Saving Private Ryan generally considered the film to beat, and of course Miramax did with Shakespeare in Love. Still quite the Oscar controversy. As much as I love Shakespeare in Love, and as many problems as I have with Saving Private Ryan, I can't help but wonder if the wrong film was or won there. And honestly, Elizabeth, I would also say that is completely worth winning Best Picture. Stellar film. Benigni won Best Actor. You may remember this, Pete. In fact, I think you referenced it last week. Let's just do a whole episode.
We're going to do a whole podcast. Fun. And I've watched so many of Benigni, like now, Benigni talk show experiences. I feel like there is enough material to do.
Oh, you could.
A Benigni talk show appearances and award-winning experiences as a podcast.
Like this movie, you may get to a point where you're like, I've had enough of the hamming it up, fella. But yes, this is the chair jumping. He ran across the chairs. He wanted to make love to everybody. Benigni won Best Actor. And this is the only second time that an actor had directed himself in an Academy Award winning performance. The other was, at the time, the other was Laurence Olivier for Hamlet back in 1948. And he's only the fourth person to be nominated for the Oscars for Best Actor, Director, and Screenplay in the same year. The others, this is the company Benigni is in: Orson Welles for Citizen Kane, Woody Allen for Annie Hall, and Warren Beatty for Heaven Can Wait and Reds. So,
that is
an
incredibly auspicious crew.
Quite.
Can you imagine saying, okay, fantasy dinner table. It's going to be me and these four guys.
Right? Yeah, little peculiar.
Orson Welles, I want to make love to you.
Director, Benigni was nominated for Best Director, but lost to Steven Spielberg for Saving Private Ryan. Best Film Editing, lost to Saving Private Ryan. Sorry, Simone Napeghi. Foreign Language Film. Okay, Best Foreign Language Film. This is the third time in our series after Z and then The Emigrants, although that was across several different years, where a film was nominated for Best Picture and Best Foreign Language Film. This ended up winning Best Foreign Language Film again because of the need at the time where, hey, it's going to win for that. We don't need it to win for Best Picture. Now, this is where I have a serious problem, Pete. Best Foreign Language Film, this won. The other nominees, Central Station, Children of Heaven, Tango, and The Grandfather. Tango, it's a very arty film. It didn't float my boat, but I can see why it would get nominated. Beautiful cinematography. The Grandfather, it had an amazing ending, which made for the film. I don't know if I'd put it up here. Children of Heaven is a really good film with some amazing child performances. And I just got to say, Children of Heaven, Central Station, The Grandfather, and this film, amazing child performances coming out of this year. It's really mind-boggling. But Pete, Central Station is it is top class film. I mean, it is such a strong film, incredible performances. Absolutely should have won Best Foreign Language Film. Absolutely should have been the film that received the Best Picture nomination instead of this film. If you haven't seen Central Station, go watch it. It is so good. The actress, I'm forgetting her name right now, she was nominated for Best Actress, along with Cate Blanchett in Elizabeth. Two incredible performances that both were overlooked by Gwyneth Paltrow because of the Miramax machine. As cute as Gwyneth is, it's just incredibly frustrating. Central Station absolutely should have won this award.
I have not seen it, but I applaud your enthusiasm, sir. I'm very excited now. You have done. You're a regular. If there were a Weinstein of the next reel, you, sir, are him.
That was my marketing muscle right there.
Oh, it was great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Regular P.T. Barnum over here.
I've got a song for you. Hey, ladies and gents. All right. Anyhow, enough of that. Best Music Original Dramatic Score. This was that small period where they had a dramatic and comedic scores. It won for that. Best Original Screenplay, lost to Shakespeare in Love. Overall, Roberto Benigni ended up having 16 nominations for Best Actor, and he won 11 of them. Very well loved. Yes, I know. And then the David Di Donatello Awards, the Italian Oscars, it won for Best Film, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, Best Producer. It's odd that they do Best Film and Best Producer as separate, but hey, they do. Those are all wins. Benigni also won a Scholars Jury David Award, whatever that is, from the David Di Donatello Awards. It only lost 4. It lost Best Sound to Hard-Boiled Egg, Best Music to Tanno de Morire, Best Supporting Actor to Silvio Orlando in Aprile, and Best Editing to Rehearsals for War. So, I mean, it did really, really well. And I think it was just riding on the kind of the excitement of the particular film.
But Andy, I'm sure none of that turned into box office success because it's a foreign film. Who sees those?
Yeah, right? Well, Benigni's film cost $20 million to get made, which is about $32 million in today's dollars. The film opened in its home country of Italy, December 20th, 1997, before finally opening here in the U.S., October 23rd, 98, opposite Apt Pupil, which we've talked about on the show, Pleasantville, Soldier, and everyone's favorite, Orgasmo. Now,
everyone,
right? I'm surprised we haven't covered that.
Me too.
Now, what's interesting here is that this was a very limited release on 6 screens, but it was still in the top 20. By week 3, however, it was clear that it was going to have a slow burn box office, and Miramax slowly started increasing its screens. It did stay in the top 20 and then had a huge boost with the announcement of its Best Picture nomination, moving it all the way up to spot 8, then doing so again the weekend right after the Oscars into spot 8, and that is when it hit its highest screen count of 1,136 screens. I don't know how many of those were dubbed versus subtitled. It did slowly trickle out after that, but the Weinsteins did prove that they knew what it took. The film ended up with a domestic gross of $57.5 million, and internationally was even more popular with a gross of $172.5 million. That gives it an adjusted total gross of $368.2 million and an adjusted profit per finished minute of nearly $2.9 million. That is a wildly successful film, Pete, and possibly one worth jumping on seats for.
That is, really jumping on seats.
For $2.9 million per minute, I would jump on seats.
I'd jump on a seat.
I would even jump on the couch with Tom Cruise.
International television. It's a surprise to me, but I'm glad we talked about it. It certainly helps put it in a little bit of context, particularly the marketing machine. The real question is, if we rank it high tonight, will that improve its long-term success? How much do you think we matter?
How much does Miramax's weight
right
come from our rankings?
Who's getting paid now?
Is a great question
for this. Disney probably, right? They're the end of everything. They're like a central node.
At this point, I would say it is them. Weirdly, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's a Miramax. But interestingly, it's kind of hard to find. Like all I could find was an old DVD at the library. It's not an incredibly popular film anymore.
You can, if you get a VPN and you change your country of origin and you happen to have a credit card that has a Canadian residence, you can get it on iTunes in Canada. But you can't get it on iTunes here, which I thought was very strange. No such thing.
How did you find it then?
It is on HBO
Max.
It's HBO Max. That terrible, terrible viewing experience that was the HBO Max version of this. So,
right. So there's that.
I'm sure this is high on their list of fixing that great wrong. All right, we should take it to the mat, Andy, don't you think?
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. There, you will see a stack-ranked list of all the movies we have ever talked about on this show. If you want to participate, swipe over in your show notes, tap the word Flickchart. It should take you directly to Life is Beautiful in the Flickchart database, where you can add it to your own list and see how it stands up against ours.
First up, Life is Beautiful or The Birdcage?
I'd watch The Birdcage first.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because before a rewatch, I would have said Life is Beautiful. Now, upon rewatch, The Birdcage.
Yep.
Life is Beautiful or The Brood? I will take The Brood.
Give me those demon babies.
Right, Life is Beautiful or The Hudsucker Proxy.
You know, we can't let that slip. That The Brood also has some outstanding child performances. Sorry, I had to fit that joke in a little bit late.
Life is Beautiful or The Hudsucker Proxy?
Hudsucker. Mm-hmm. Is this where the line is drawn?
I'd say Life is Beautiful.
All right. There we go.
I honestly, I don't care either way, but I'm gonna still say it.
Okay.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
For crying out loud!
I'm sorry. Now I feel guilty that I won.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Life is Beautiful or Star Trek V: The Final Frontier?
Oh goodness, Life is Beautiful.
Catwoman and all. I'm gonna say Star Trek V.
All right. You know, what the hell? Here we go.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Paper. Oh, again? Really? I thought I was being so smart. So strategic.
I thought you were going to be smarter, and I went with the same. Life is Beautiful or East of Eden?
East of Eden.
Yeah, I'll say East of Eden. Life is Beautiful or My Dinner with Andre? Oh, My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah, My Dinner with Andre.
Life is Beautiful or Duck, You Sucker?
I love that we have that on our list.
That's right.
I am Duck, You Sucker.
Me too. Life is Beautiful or the 1999 remake, The Thomas Crown Affair?
Thomas Crown.
Life is Beautiful or The Young Girls of Rochefort?
Life is Beautiful.
I'll take The Young Girls of Rochefort.
Here we go.
Even though we have a really creepy
it's
May December romance in there.
Yeah. Right.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Rock.
Hey, you learned. Life is Beautiful takes it, and that puts Life is Beautiful in spot 406 out of 465, which is pretty low. It's about a 13% on our chart.
fare great on my list, but it fared far better on my list than it did on our list. We do not agree with me, apparently. How did it do on yours?
I re-ranked it. Before, it was
Yeah.
in the top 25% of my chart. On re-ranking, I just felt like the issues that I have with it, while I still think there are good things in this film, I just ended up struggling more with the nature of it and with Benigni particularly. It landed in spot 3180 out of 4450, which is a 29%, pretty low.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a fall from grace. Mine, it was similar to yours. I had ranked it on memory when you first got me into Flickchart, and I thought, oh, I remember really loving that movie. Probably 5 stars. This one, it dropped to 503 on my chart out of 1463, so it's still pretty high, all things considered. This is one of those experiences where if I go by the algorithm, it should be a 3.5 star on other services. So over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel should be a 3.5 star. I don't like it that much. Like if it's a 2.5 star experience, then I feel pretty good. I actually removed my original ranking for this movie, which was a 4.5 star, and I just did not get the joy out of it this time. And I feel like I get what people are saying about it. I get it now. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry.
Well, it's easy to love a film that is, it really is full of passion and life and joy, right? I mean, there's a lot of that, and it's in full form. And it's easy to walk out of a film like that and just go, oh, it makes me feel happy. I get it. I definitely get it. I didn't drop quite as low as you. It's so funny because our letterboxds are so opposite of our flick charts today. I still am I'm 3 stars. I still think there are good things in here. I enjoy kind of it for what it is. I just don't find it nearly special like I did at the time. So I'm 3 stars and a heart, but it's like, am I going to return to this? I really doubt it. So where are you? Where are you landing? Are you at 2.5 or 2? What's your final resting spot?
I could do 2.5. I'm going to do 2.5. I'm going to give it a heart. We're going to call it the end.
Okay.
So it'll sit for us. It'll sit for the next reel represented as a 3 star with a
correct.
Heart. Yeah. All right. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got it out of the way. What does that mean for us now? What do we do next?
Just a few short years, we are going to be jumping to the year 2000, and we are going to be talking about a fantastic Ang Lee film, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
How is it that we've not talked about this movie?
I don't know. I just don't know. Well, now we have the chance.
Decade. We have not talked about this movie.
Right. Very few Ang Lee films in general. Other than Hulk.
We did talk about Hulk.
Over at Marvel Movie Minute.
All right. Well, that one started it, but now may the dominoes fall. I am very excited to talk about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Hidden Dragon next week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, well, sometimes they doeth. We've split on this today.
Ooh.
You are living in Amazon. I have
in
moved
the sewers
over to
of Amazon.
dregs, and I am in Letterboxd today with the review that I would like to read. Would you like to do the honors?
Yes, sure. I actually have 2 1-stars. The first one, it makes me laugh because it's 1 star by TJ, who gives it 1 star and says, canceled order. Apparently that's what TJ does.
Is this what we're doing right now? We're just going to we're only reading Amazon reviews that actually relate to the shipping product? Is that what we're doing? That would be great. I'm ready to pivot.
If I find those that are like that silly, it's like, I'm going to give it 1 star because I canceled my order. The other one is by his humble servant, gives it 1 star and says, movie had a very depressing and sad ending. If you like uplifting movies, stay away from this one. Okay, his humble servant. Thank you.
Did not read the tin. Okay. I've got a very special, I like to call this a VSP, a very special, VSR. It's a VSR, a very special review. And it is a review of Life is Beautiful from one of our community members over on Letterboxd, the one and only, the inimitable Nick Langdon. And I'd been holding off on reading this review until after I'd put my notes together for this movie because I knew that he was not a huge fan. He's a noted antagonist of this movie, but I hadn't quite gotten the entire picture, and so I'd like to share this with you now. Now, Nick has actually given this a 0.5 star review.
Ooh, okay.
So he does not care for it. Like almost everyone else on planet Earth, I've never seen Jerry Lewis's infamous The Day the Clown Cried. However, having now endured Life is Beautiful, I have some idea of just how badly a comedy drama set during the Holocaust can fail. I'm a fan of the darkest of black comedies, as oftentimes the only way to cope with evil and death is to laugh. However, here, writer-director-star Roberto Benigni chooses another direction, deciding that schmaltzy, uplifting, feel-good attempts at humor can somehow mesh with tragedy, and to say that no such meshing is achieved is a colossal understatement. Benigni plays Guido, a Jew living in fascist Italy, and from the start, he's a deeply irritating screen presence. Imagine a goofy version of Pepe Le Pew doing a bad cover version of the waiter section from Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, and you're halfway there. But despite this, Benigni clearly expects the audience to fall in love with him. The first act is made up of Guido's unfunny antics as he annoys everyone he comes across, but somehow charms a woman away from her fiancé to marry him instead. Do I need to mention the plot is stupid and relies heavily on coincidences? Cut to a few years later, and he and his family are sent to a concentration camp, but Guido decides to pretend it's all a game for the benefit of his young son. This is clearly where we, the audience, are expected to swoon and swear our utmost affection for this character, whereas what actually happens is we only hate the writer-director-star even more for the very idea this is a premise worth admiring. Some might think me hard-hearted for not swooning here, nor at the amazingly ill-conceived happy ending, but rather, I'd contend that anyone who does should embark on a long conversation with himself. The German Jewish philosopher Theodor Adorno once said, "There can be no poetry after Auschwitz." And while this can be contested as art is essential to understanding every aspect of the human experience, I think most should agree that the Holocaust does not mix well with japes and gambles. This is a movie for watching through a palm to the face. Nick. Mwah. Poetry. Poetry.
And I am currently reviewing my life. My life choices, apparently.
Also, disc cracked. Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchase is made through our links. Give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We covered a lot of great movies that were adapted from other material in Season 10.
Our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals is where listeners can purchase the source material behind all our adapted film discussions. It helps support the show at no extra cost when you buy through our links.
In our foreign language Best Picture nominees series, we looked at several adaptations, including Z, The Postman Il Postino, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Letters from Iwo Jima.
We hit the high seas with In the Heart of the Sea from Nathaniel Philbrick's nonfiction book for our Aquatic Killers series.
Definitely a weaker entry in that series.
I bet the book is better.
Oh, me too.
Member bonus episodes featured adaptations like Gone Girl, The Russia House, Ivanhoe, The Hot Rock, The Big Heat, and Naked Lunch.
Oliver Stone brought not just original stories, but also adaptations like Conan the Barbarian, Scarface, Year of the Dragon, 8 Million Ways to Die, Talk Radio, and Born on the 4th of July.
Mary Herron's disturbingly insightful American Psycho was adapted from the Bret Easton Ellis book.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
Oh my God, it even has a watermark.
And of course, more Stephen King with The Mist, The Green Mile, and The Shawshank Redemption for our King a la Darabont series.
Find links to all of these books and more adapted films on our originals page. That's thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports our show.
Get the full list of books that we've talked about and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.